Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. Carter Walton had always believed that love was commodity you erected patiently, slip up by slip up, through trust, thickness, and quiet offerings that no bone ever saw. His relationship with Daphne Rose had been exactly that. From the moment she stepped into his life, everything felt calmer, steadier, and more meaningful. Daphne wasn't loud or dramatic like so numerous people in the Forrester route. She was thoughtful, gentle, and emotionally predicated. She brought peace to Carter's complicated world, and in return, he offered her stability, fidelity, and a future. Their engagement had felt ineluctable, like the natural conclusion to a love story that had been unfolding for times. Everyone at Forrester Creations believed they were witnessing a rare, healthy love in a megacity known for dishonors and backstabbings. The marriage was supposed to be the evidence that real love could survive in Los Angeles. The form was planned with fineness and restraint, just as Daphne preferred. A private estate overlooking the ocean had been reserved. The guest list was limited to close musketeers, family, and a sprinkle of trusted associates. Carter wanted the day to be about commitment, not spectacle. Daphne agreed, averring she wanted commodity intimate, meaningful, and sincere. Every detail reflected their participated values: soft flowery arrangements, neutral colors, simple decor, and a focus on emotion rather than extravagance. There was no sense of chaos, no hint of what was coming. However, the atmosphere felt nearly too perfect, like the calm before a storm no bone could yet see. If anything, Carter arrived beforehand, dressed sprucely, jitters fluttering in his casket but steady in his heart. He'd no way misdoubted Daphne's love for him. She had supported him through professional challenges, family pressures, and moments of particular query. When Carter plotted with the emotional weight of his demanding part at Forrester Creations, Daphne had been his anchor. She heeded, encouraged, and reminded him of the man he wanted to be. He trusted her fully. This wasn't just a marriage. It was the pledge of a life erected on collective respect and participated dreams. Daphne still wasn't passing the same calm. Behind the scenes, her feelings were twisting in ways no bone differently could see. While she loved Carter, there was a part of her heart she had no way completely brazened. A once connection, undetermined and dangerously violent, had been still resurfacing in her life. Evan Blake, a man from her history, had reappeared months before the marriage. Their history wasn't casual. Evan had formerly been the great love of Daphne's youth, the man she believed she'd marry before life took them in different directions. Their separation had been painful, unforeseen, and undetermined, leaving emotional scars Daphne no way completely healed. When Evan returned to Los Angeles, he claimed it was for business, but his presence awakened passions Daphne allowed she had buried ever. They ran into each other by chance, participated in many polite exchanges, and also sluggishly began talking more frequently. Evan wasn't trying to sabotage her engagement at first. He simply reminded her of who she used to be, of dreams she formerly had that didn't include boardrooms, commercial politics, or precisely planned futures. With Evan, life had felt robotic, passionate, and changeable. Those feelings crept back and still, growing stronger each time they crossed paths. Daphne tried to ignore the passions. She reminded herself that Carter was good to her, that he loved her deeply, that he represented security and commitment. But feelings don't vanish just because they're inconvenient. As the marriage approached, Daphne set up herself questioning everything. She asked herself whether she was choosing the right future or simply the safest one. She wondered if love should feel comfortable or stimulating, stable or wild. These studies visited her in the quiet moments when no bone differently was watching. On the morning of the marriage, Daphne stood alone in her matrimonial suite, gaping at her reflection. The dress was beautiful, elegant, and impeccably acclimatized, yet commodity felt off. Her smile looked forced. Her eyes didn't reflect the joy everyone anticipated to see. She told herself it was just jitters, that every bridegroom felt overwhelmed on her marriage day. But deep down, she knew the anxiety was embedded in commodity, much more dangerous mistrustfulness. Meanwhile, Carter was girdled in well-provision who respected his commitment to Daphne. Musketeers praised him for choosing a mate who balanced him emotionally. Associates respected the way he prioritized love despite his demanding career. No Bone suspected that the foundation beneath his happiness was formerly cracking. As guests began arriving, the atmosphere grew warmer, filled with expectation and sanguinity. The ocean breath carried the scent of flowers across the property, and soft music played in the background. Everything looked exactly as it should. But behind the scenes, Daphne entered a communication that changed everything. Evan had transferred her a simple, ruinous note. He told her he couldn't let her walk down the aisle without knowing the verity. He confessed that he still loved her, that he no way stopped allowing about her, and that he was ready to leave Los Angeles with her if she wanted a different life. The communication hit Daphne like a surge. She felt torn between two futures. One was predictable, stable, and safe with Carter. The other was uncertain, parlous, and emotionally charged with Evan. She tried to ignore the communication, but her heart refused to cooperate. Every step toward the form felt heavier than the last. Daphne's closest musketeers noticed her growing pressure. Her hands quivered slightly as she acclimated her robe. Her breathing came shallow. She kept glancing at her phone, as if staying for commodity. No Bone dared to ask what was wrong. They assumed it was normal marriage day stress. When the music began motioning the launch of the form, Daphne felt her casket strain. This was the moment she had promised herself she'd been staying for. But rather of excitement, she felt trapped. As she stood at the entrance, hearkening to the distant sound of guests settling into their seats, her mind contended through every memory she had with Evan. Their horse laugh, their adventures, their participated dreams before life pulled them piecemeal. She realized that part of her heart had no way truly left him. Carter, standing at the balcony, looked out at the ocean and smiled. He imagined Daphne walking toward him, the woman he believed would be his woman, his mate, his future. He'd no idea that she was standing only a many yards down, fighting a war within herself. The moment arrived for Daphne to step forward. Rather, she sat. Her body refused to move. Fear surged through her modes. The weight of the decision came unsupportable. She knew that walking down the aisle would mean committing to a life she wasn't completely sure she wanted. She realized that marrying Carter while still loving another man would be the cruelest treason imaginable. Without warning, Daphne turned down from the aisle. At first, her musketeers allowed. She was overwhelmed and demanded a moment. But also she reached for her phone. Another communication from Evan awaited for her, telling her he was outdoors, ready to leave with her incontinently. That was the breaking point. Daphne made a choice that would change everything. She removed her robe, handed it to a stupefied bridesmaid, and walked out of the suite. Guests heard whispers as word spread that the bridegroom hadn't appeared. The form stalled. Confusion gurgled through the crowd. Carter remained at the balcony, ignorant that his entire future was unraveling behind him. Moments laterally, Daphne surfaced not in the direction of the form, but toward the exit. Her marriage dress traced behind her as she walked snappily, her heels clicking against the gravestone bottom. Guests goggled in unbelief. Some assumed it was part of the form, a dramatic entrance. Others tasted commodity was wrong. Outside, Evan awaited by his auto. When Daphne saw him, her feelings exploded. Fear, excitement, remorse, and love collided all at formerly. Without looking back, she climbed into the passenger seat. Evan drove down as the sound of distant marriage music echoed uselessly behind them. Inside the venue, chaos erupted. A fellow rushed to find Daphne. Guests rumored, phones came out, and enterprise spread like campfire. Carter stood firm at the balcony, his smile sluggishly fading as the verity began to surface. When someone eventually told him that Daphne had left the property, his world shattered. Carter didn't reply with wrathfulness at first. He felt numb. His heart plotted to reuse what his mind refused to believe. The woman he loved had faded on their marriage day. No explanation. No farewell. Just silence. As the reality set in, the emotional weight came unsupportable. Carter felt lowered, betrayed, and deeply confused. He trusted Daphne fully. He believed in their future. Now he was left standing in front of everyone, abandoned and exposed. News of the reproach spread snappily throughout Los Angeles. A forced marriage exploding into chaos was exactly the kind of drama people thrived on. Enterprise about Daphne's unforeseen departure dominated exchanges. Some criticized cold bases. Others suspected infidelity. Many knew the full verity. Carter withdrew from the public eye. He plotted to face associates, musketeers, and indeed family. The shame felt inviting. Further than that, he felt agonized. Losing Daphne hurt far further than any professional reversal ever could. Daphne, meanwhile, faced her own emotional storm. Running down with Evan wasn't the puck-tail escape she imagined. While the passion was real, so were the consequences. She had destroyed a man who loved her deeply. She had walked down from stability, trust, and an unborn erected on commitment. Guilt followed her wherever she went. Evan tried to assure her that she had done the right thing, that choosing love over obligation was stalwart. But Daphne couldn't shake the image of Carter standing alone at the balcony. She knew she had caused endless damage. Back in Los Angeles, Carter sluggishly began to heal. He threw himself into his work, using his career as a distraction from the pain. But the emotional scars remained. He questioned his capability to trust, to love, and to believe in pledges again. The reproach changed how people saw Daphne. Some respected her courage to follow her heart. Others condemned her for her atrocity. But one thing was inarguable: her choice had altered multiple lives ever. Carter ultimately realized that while Daphne had broken his heart, she had also spared him from a continuance erected on mistrustfulness. He merited someone who chose him fully, without vacillation or divided feelings. Daphne learned that love without honesty leads to destruction. Running down may have felt freeing in the moment, but the consequences would follow her ever. And Evan, though he gained the woman he loved, also gained the weight of knowing their happiness was erected on heartache. Carter's marriage didn't just explode. It converted lives, shattered visions, and reminded everyone that love is no way simple, no way safe, and no way guaranteed. Occasionally, the most beautiful observances hide the most painful trueness. After the marriage disaster, the silence girding Carter's life came louder than any argument ever could. The days that followed Daphne's exposure were some of the darkest he'd ever known. Every familiar space reminded him of what had been lost. The apartment he formerly participated with Daphne felt concave, stripped of warmth and meaning. Her clothes were gone, her prints removed, and her presence cancelled in a way that felt both purposeful and ruinous. Carter tried to move himself. That time would dull the pain. But heartache doesn't follow a schedule. It lingers, reshapes itself, and finds new ways to hurt. At Forrester Creations, associates treated him else. Some avoided eye contact, doubtful of what to say. Others offered sympathetic ganders that only reminded him of his public demotion. The failed marriage wasn't just a particular tragedy, it had come a caption, a content of gossip, a source of endless enterprise. Carter abominated being reduced to a reproach. He'd always flattered himself on professionalism and integrity, yet now his private pain was entertainment for others. Despite the emotional chaos, Carter refused to let his career suffer. He worked longer hours, took on further liabilities, and buried himself in legal accommodations and commercial opinions. Work came his guard, the only place where his feelings didn't control him. But when the office lights bedimmed and the structure voided, the loneliness returned stronger than ever. The silence in his apartment felt heavier than any argument Daphne and he'd ever had. He replayed recollections constantly. The way Daphne used to smile when she walked into a room. The small routines they participated. The quiet exchanges about their future. Every memory felt like a memorial that he'd believed in commodity that wasn't real, or at least not real for both of them. Carter plotted with one painful question: how long had Daphne been doubtful? Was their entire relationship erected on a taradiddle, or had commodity changed along the way? He didn't know which answer hurt more. Meanwhile, Daphne and Evan tried to make a new life down from Los Angeles. They dislocated to a literal city where no bone honored them, hoping distance would soften the consequences of their decision. At first, everything felt like a dream. The ocean views, the slower pace of life, and the sense of freedom made Daphne feel like she had escaped a pen she hadn't indeed realized she was trapped in. But freedom came with guilt. Every quiet moment reminded Daphne of Carter, the man she had promised to marry, the man she had abandoned without explanation. Evan tried to assure her that she had chosen honesty over obligation, but Daphne wasn't induced. Honesty would have meant telling Carter the verity before walking down. Rather, she had faded, leaving only confusion and heartache before. Daphne set up herself visited by the image of Carter standing alone at the balcony. The memory followed her far and wide, moping in the corners of her studies. She began to realize that love doesn't abolish responsibility. Choosing one heart shouldn't bear destroying another. Evan, for his part, plotted with his own equivocal feelings. He loved Daphne deeply, but he also knew their happiness was erected on the remains of someone differently's life. That knowledge counted heavily on him. He wanted to believe their love story was worth the pain it caused, yet he couldn't escape the reality that their mourning had been messy and innocently complicated. Back in Los Angeles, Carter sluggishly began to rebuild his emotional foundation. He leaned on close musketeers who reminded him that treason doesn't define his worth. He attended remedy sessions not because he felt weak, but because he wanted to understand his own emotional patterns. He refused to let one heartbreak shape his unborn connections. Through soul-searching, Carter honored that he'd ignored subtle signs. Daphne's vacillation, her emotional distance in the final weeks, her adding secretiveness. Love had dazed him to her query, but he also realized that loving completely is no way a mistake, indeed when it ends in pain. As weeks turned into months, Carter's heartache evolved into clarity. He no longer criticized himself for Daphne's choice. He accepted that love requires collective certainty, and Daphne simply didn't have it. Suddenly, Daphne's exposure began to affect Forrester Creations in other ways. Rumors surfaced about her connections, her once connections, and her unforeseen departure. Some questioned whether she had ever truly belonged in Carter's world. Others suspected that she had always been searching for commodity differently. Carter refused to engage in the gossip. He chose silence over bitterness, quality over resentment. Yet the emotional damage remained. Also, one day a letter arrived. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't grand. It was simply an envelope with Daphne's handwriting on it. Carter goggled at it for a long time before opening it. He wasn't sure if he wanted answers or check, or if either would make the pain easier to bear. The letter contained no defenses, only admissions. Daphne wrote about her confusion, her undetermined history, and her emotional struggle. She admitted she should have been honest before the marriage. She apologized for the pain she caused and conceded that Carter merited far better than the way she had treated him. Reading the letter didn't heal Carter fully, but it helped him understand. Daphne hadn't run down because Carter wasn't enough. She had run because she wasn't ready for the life she had promised. That consummation gave Carter commodity he hadn't felt in a long time: peace. Across the country, Daphne continued to scuffle with her own emotional consequences. While she loved Evan, she realized love alone doesn't abolish the history. She had changed her life, but she couldn't change the impact of her choices. Her character, her connections, and her sense of tone had all been affected. People in her new city saw her as mysterious, elegant, and distant. No Bone knew the story behind her quiet address. No Bone knew about the marriage she had abandoned, the man she had hurt, or the future she had destroyed to find her own. Evan tasted Daphne's emotional distance. He bothered that her guilt might ultimately turn into remorse. He stressed that one day, Daphne might wonder what her life with Carter could have been. Their relationship faced challenges embedded not in lack of love, but in the weight of their participated history. Love that begins in chaos must constantly fight to survive its own history. Meanwhile, Carter began to open himself to new possibilities. He concentrated on particular growth, emotional mending, and rediscovering who he was outside of a relationship. He traveled, spent time with family, and reconnected with pursuits he'd neglected. He learned that mending doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to carry the recollections without letting them control you. The reproach that formerly defined him sluggishly faded into the background. Carter's character as a strong, principled leader remained intact, however. People admired him more for handling heartache with grace, if anything. As time passed, Daphne realized commodity painful escaping a situation doesn't always mean escaping the feelings attached to it. She had chosen a new life, but the old one still lived inside her. She wondered if Carter had moved on. She wondered if he still allowed about her. And she wondered if she had truly chosen the right path, or simply the most emotionally charged one. Evan noticed Daphne's growing soul-searching. He loved her, but he couldn't contend with the ghost of the man she had left before. Their relationship, though passionate, demanded the emotional security Daphne formerly had with Carter. Ultimately, Daphne began to understand that certainty matters. Love shouldn't feel like an emotional battleground. Carter, on the other hand, felt stronger with every passing month. He learned to trust again, not blindly but courteously. He promised himself that his coming relationship would be erected on honesty, emotional alignment, and collective commitment. He stopped seeing the marriage disaster as a failure. Rather, he saw it as a painful but necessary assignment. The experience tutored him that real love requires clarity, not confusion. And while Daphne ran toward passion, Carter walked toward peace. Their paths, formerly intertwined, now moved in contrary directions, all shaped by the same moment of chaos that changed their lives ever. Carter's marriage didn't just explode in front of guests. It exploded inside hearts. And from those emotional ashes, two veritably different futures were born.